I never thought I would see the day that Anne Frank would become controversial. If Helen Keller could see what's going on in this country, she would be embarrassed for it. Today on Failure to Stop Last Call, we are covering all the news. We've got conservative Ant with us, Anthony Raimondi, Drew Breezy, and Deadleg covering Russell Brand, Tim Ballard, the attack on Rumble. We've got California fining schools that ban texts that are based in LGBTQ sexuality that are banning those books. We've got Anne Frank being banned in Texas. A whole bunch of other things. We got a dress code that we've got to cover. We've got the Canadians celebrating a real-life Nazi. And we got a 60 minutes coverage on Ukraine that will, blow your socks off. So all this and more on today's Failure to Stop Last Call.
The growing calls across the nation to defund the police.
To end policing as we know it.
Off the charts violence in New York City. 11 people shot in just 8 hours.
Oh, well, we just ended that one. Somebody just messed around with it. Nobody's supposed to be touching the controls but me. Damn it. We got a lot of people on today. It's the first time that we've done this here on the Failure to Stop Last Call show, Political News Wednesdays. Today's show is brought to you by officerprivacy.com. It's officerprivacy.com/Wolfpack. We also got Factor Meals, promo code Wolfpack50, meal planning to the next level, and ghostbed.com/Wolfpack. Sleep so good, it's scary. Ooh. We got a lot to cover in the news. One joining me is Andrew Baxter at Drew Breezy on the social media webs. He is a 30-year-ish detective supervisor, tons of law enforcement experience. We've got Deadleg, a Hawaiian ex-law enforcement who has a leg that has died on him. And then we have political commentator, social media influencer, Anthony Raimondi. Gentlemen, good day. How are you?
Hello.
Good day. Hello. It's always real news when you're talking with an accent. This is all the news that you need to know so that you don't sound like an asshole at the weekend barbecue, giving you something else to talk about other than dead babies and domestic violence. I preached on this show 1,000 times that the election season is going to be something we've never seen before or experienced in our lifetime. I really, really feel like this one is going over and beyond, especially for first responders. We're always the scapegoat in all these elections. I think it's going to be a lot worse in this one. And we're just getting started. There is an apparent attack on the rights, and I'm not sure, maybe I'm wrong and somebody can help me out here, but I don't know that the right, I've always stayed apolitical through election seasons. I didn't let people know who I was voting for in almost every single election. I've kept it quiet. But in this election, I feel like if I don't speak up, I will be on the wrong side of history. Does anybody else feel that way?
Yes.
Fair enough. I feel like one side is attacking the other side much more viciously. I feel like the tactics that are being used right now are tactics that were just they were like top secret tactics through the 90s that you only just kind of like let the curtain off a little bit. Now we've just removed the whole curtain and we're just like a full frontal blitzkrieg style attack.
Let me use some anecdotal information for you, Eric. I was, for a few years, I worked on a Secret Service task force. It was a financial crimes task force, so we dealt with strictly financial crimes. Secret Service does not ferret out their dignitary protection to local law enforcement, but they do financial crimes, and that's how I ended up in the position. However, when by virtue of being in that position, I was actually a liaison between my law enforcement agency, a rather large law enforcement agency in South Florida, on the I-4 corridor, mind you, in an election year. And just about any time a dignitary came to town, whether it be the president, a presidential candidate, the vice president, or anybody else of note, it is a rather big undertaking, as you can imagine. And I was kind of the point man for my agency. I would say, hey, look, they're looking for 10 horses, 5 boats, 200 officers. That was kind of, and then we would just kind of bargain from there. Like, people don't realize how much money actually goes into a visit and how bad it gridlocks an entire town. Now, the reason I'm telling you this is because I handled the dignitary protection for everybody from George W. Bush to John Kerry. I was in motorcades for Cheney and Barack
Abraham Lincoln.
Obama. Like, okay, so either side of the aisle, as they call it, like, you know, Democrat, Republican, and it never mattered to me. It was always about the protection. I didn't agree with John Kerry for sure, and he was an asshole. I was within an arm's reach as he was chewing out a staffer, a female staffer, while he was a candidate. I completely embarrassed her and belittled her in front of all of us, and he had no idea who I was, but I found out who he was. My point in telling you all of this is that when you go to these venues, and it's a Republican-run situation, like it's a rally for, let's say, Trump, or a rally, like, I wasn't part of Trump, but it's a rally for Cheney or George Bush. It's mostly conservative people having a good time, Uncle Sam beards, red, white, and blue hats, and everything else, and everybody is welcome. Because we're going to get our share of protesters on the outside. You're going to get your share of protesters on the inside, because they hate the Republican establishment, and they're going to yell and scream and do whatever they do. But it was more of a, from the conservative side, like, just laugh it off. Like, okay, shut up, or drown them out, or just keep moving, or listen to what they have to say even, or just turn your back to them, whatever. When it was the opposite, and I've seen it firsthand. You can ask anybody that's in dignitary protection that when it's the opposite, when it's a Democratic candidate, Democrat office holder, and you're doing the dignitary protection there, and a conservative shows up with a sign, the people in that crowd are violent. They are angry. They will punch, rip the sign out of your hand, rip it in front of you, and throw it in your face. And I'm not talking about, like, you know, black bloc or people with bandanas over their faces. I'm talking about, like, 65-year-old men with white hair that, you know, look like Jerry Garcia or whatever. They are violent. They just have this violent reaction towards conservative people. And this is like, this has been going on for ages, but now they can do it anonymously. Now they can take pot shots at you over the internet. I think that's what we're seeing.
We've seen Tim Pool's been, been the victim of swatting and all these things. I'm not sure I've seen any big leftist, and maybe I'm right, Anthony, you would probably be able to answer this better, but I haven't seen any leftist social media commentators or anything like that getting swatted. Why is it always conservative people getting swatted?
I think so. Conservatives have fought back on this, and they have swatted liberal.
Hey, Anthony, really quick, can you mute your computer?
Oh.
There, we don't have an echo there, but we'll get you back up here.
How's that?
Why is he still? Does anybody know why he's still having an echo? We'll figure it out. 2 seconds here.
Sorry.
Go ahead and talk real quick, Anthony. Let's see if you still got that.
Test.
Yeah, it's still a weird echo. Josh, if you'll call him and figure that out, I'll mute him and then we'll get him back up here. Well, in the sense of what we're talking about here, while we get Anthony's microphone fixed, is that Russell Brand. There's, what we were talking about is that a lot of conservatives aren't attacking the left, but it feels like there's an overt war on attacking the right. Case in point here, and I think this is the most clear case that we've ever seen, is the Russell Brand case. For those of you who are not familiar, who live under a rock, which is most first responders that aren't listening to social media and aren't listening to mainstream media, what's going on with Russell Brand should scare everyone. It's not just some cheeseball actor that was in that little Greek film that all your wives make you watch over and over again, get him to the Greek type deal. But no, this is something that's very disconcerting. What happened to Russell Brand essentially was Russell Brand was a self-proclaimed sexual deviant back in the day. He was an addict of sex. He claims that he's been with thousands and thousands of women consensually. But you know what? It was that bravado that he displayed that was his character that made him famous. We all celebrated that behavior. In fact, not only did we celebrate it, But it was all, that's what we saw in the movies. He literally played himself. Free love, free drugs, this kind of sexual guru. And that's what we applauded him for. And that's what made him famous. Now you fast forward 12 years, for those of you who don't know the story, and Russell Brand is sober. He's written books. He's spoken out about his sexual addictions and how he's overcome addiction and how he's become a political commentator, mainly a libertarian political commentator, to be more specific. But recently he went on Bill Maher's show and he called out Big Pharma by reading facts. He said, I'm just going to read some facts. And he read about how much money Big Pharma made. He made about which political deals were made during the whole COVID pandemic. And he kind of just really exposed the rich elites, Big Pharma, and mainstream media. Well, it just so happens that the clip of that video of him on Bill Maher went viral. And it had over 50 million views and counting. But what was more alarming to the rich elites and to the, I guess, the far left, I don't see many people from the far right complaining about this, but all of the comments, almost all of them agreed with Russell Brand, meaning that the people, what Russell Brand is saying is exactly what the people are thinking. And then almost with impeccable, almost divine timing, almost godlike timing, a media company decides to go out and try to find women to come out against sexual allegations. Now, all of these women, they had to be almost coaxed into coming out against Russell Brand. They almost had to be, what it looks like and what it appears in this investigation so far is that all of these allegations, they only were present when the media came to them and under the guise of he's getting all of this success. And where do you stand in this success? And you don't. So these women are coming out with these allegations, but only after. Nobody cared about these allegations. Nobody cared about his sexual deviant behavior. As a matter of fact, it was applauded by watching all of it and celebrated because we watched all of those movies and we made all of his movies extremely popular. But only until he speaks out against the rich elites do they assassinate him via character assassination. I think the days of assassination are over. You can't just go put a bullet in somebody's head in Ford's Theater. But what you can do is simply tell them or tell the people or whisper to a media outlet source of some kind of sexual deviant behavior, and we'll let the media, we'll let the frenzy do its thing. And right now they are going after, they have canceled over allegations that weren't even criminal. Before they were even criminal allegations, YouTube removed Russell Brand from the YouTube. They demonetized him. I mean, this is a channel that's making tens of thousands of dollars a day.
A day.
So they went after this man's livelihood over allegations to a media source 12 years ago.
Well, correct. Just a quick correction. They went after, they went on the word of somebody else's allegation of allegations, right? Like, it's not like people reported to YouTube, hey, he's a sexual deviant, blah, blah, blah. YouTube took this information from whatever source. And this is reminiscent of what happened with Twitter back when it happened. Like, they're just like, you're a government agency. You say it's true. Good enough. That's all we need. Put it in writing and we're good to go. It doesn't have to be true. It just has to come from a source, right?
Yeah, and I believe that was Nancy Pelosi that put that out. Am I correct on saying that?
Put what out about the?
Well, Nancy Pelosi
right?
made a statement to about how, and I think this was, I don't know, 5 or 6 years ago, where she explained the media tactic of all we have to do is leak something to the media, whether it be true or not true, and the media will, and basically what she's admitting to is a character assassination.
This is what they do constantly. It's confession through projection. She was actually explaining she was trying to explain a way of something that happened to one of her Democratic counterparts. But she described very perfectly in detail what they did to Donald Trump. And whereas like we make up this thing and we leak it to the media reports on it, then we can jump on it as the legislative body and say, look, even the media is saying it, and then it just builds from there. Like the Hunter laptop is a classic example of that.
Yeah, I mean, but unfortunately, with the Hunter laptop, that was a real story.
Yeah,
there was a laptop. Right. There was, in fact, a laptop. There, a third party did find this laptop. It was confirmed by the FBI that it was a laptop, and the laptop had really bad. Like, there was evidence of this. We don't have any evidence of Russell Brand's allegations. We have anonymous characters from 12 years ago. We didn't have a criminal. We now have a criminal investigation.
Yeah.
What I've seen here, though, is an absolute guilty before proven innocent.
Yeah.
Proven they have completely murdered this guy's name or attempted to murder his name, and only because he spoke out against the media. It is so clear. It is clear as day that this would not have happened if he would not have spoke out against Big Pharma. Like I said, divine, godlike timing here. The minute that his video gets 50 million views with all of the comments siding with him, it really is like a movie. It's like a Hunger Games movie where they were like, oh my gosh, the people are starting to agree with Russell Brand. We have to get rid of him. But instead of assassinating him, instead of killing him, what we'll do is we'll just absolutely bury this man in the dirt. And then simultaneously, you have Tim Ballard, who had one of the most controversial movies of the year, which is about protecting children, who comes out to say that he is running for a Senate position. And again, all of the sexual allegations, not criminal, have come out. And everybody starts to separate themselves. The church starts to separate themselves. The organization that he works for, he separates himself. He steps down as the CEO, and I'm guessing that's just because you have to. There was some kind of allegation that happened with failure to stop. I think I would like to think that I would take the Dave Portnoy stance, where I'm not going to resign and I'm not going to step down. I'm just going to meet it head on. But,
right. That's kind of. We spoke about this briefly, and you and I differ a little bit about this because I think that the cases are a lot different. I think Russell Brand is an actual character assassination. I think that Tim Ballard is a situation where people were not comfortable with how far he was taking things, and there's even notion that he's choosing that seat to run just so when those allegations come out, he can say, see, they're doing it just to assassinate my character, just like they did to Russell Brand, just like they did to Judge Kavanaugh. That's what I'm getting.
I mean, that would be some there'd be some like next level planning. For me, that's kind of like, the media came out, and I think we can pull this story up at some point, that they came out and said that this was a Russell Brand conspiracy theory, and that the only reason he went sober and he went political commentator is so that when these sexual allegations came out, that he could say, oh, well, they're only doing this because I'm speaking out against the government, which, what seems more like a conspiracy theory, that this guy wasn't a sexual deviant, and that this guy was a political commentator and he made some real headwaves and they tried to assassinate his character, or that Russell Brand made this huge plan to become a social media commentator, a political commentator, and he went sober and everything, so that 12 years later, when they do come out with it, you know what I'm saying? Like, I feel like that is the same excuse they did use for Russell Brand, and the media came out and said that exact thing. I
don't know what the church and the Underground Railroad would stand to gain by distancing themselves, other than there's merit to the complaints.
Sure, I get what you're saying as far as that there is merit. I actually talked to somebody who worked on the operation. What is it? OUR, and he says that he believes the allegations too, and that he has a reason why he doesn't work for that company anymore. And he said he'd love to talk to me about it. In 45 minutes. So I'm guessing, there might be something to these allegations. But what I really think is interesting here, though, is that I don't think it has anything to do with the victims. It's a pure political character assassination. So nobody cared about this when it was going on. Nobody cared about it, but it's only when you run for political seat that we care about it. I feel like these victims should be heard way before. I said the same thing about Russell Brand. These allegations could be true about Russell Brand. I mean, when you're having sex with thousands of people, I mean, that leaves a lot of room for error. When you're doing a lot of drugs, that leaves a lot of room for error. But I feel that these things only come to light when the rich elites don't like what they're saying.
All right. Well, let's break down the differences, though, because the difference between these two cases are Russell Brand, you can voluntarily not listen to. An elected official, you have no choice. You have to listen to it. Like if this guy's elected into office, he represents you, and you've got no choice. So I think that there may be a pool of victims, and I don't know anything more about the case maybe than you do, but I think
I also reached out to another female who says that her experiences were nothing but professionalism, and she was an operator.
I think there may be a pool of victims or a pool of people that were in the organization that knew what was going on, and they're comfortable with, man, you got to do what you got to do to save those kids, the kids. We have the #1 movie, and it's bringing a lot of attention to the issue versus, okay, wait a minute. Now he's going to run the country. I don't agree with his moral character to be in a legislative.
So what would you think would be the point of them going after and completely trying to silence guys like Alex Jones and Andrew Tate, as Maverick Effect says in the live chats here?
They have influence.
Yeah, well, exactly. And I think that's kind of where I was going here, is that I feel like there is an overt war to silence the truth, to silence the right. And which is why probably for the first time in my life, I've been more boisterous about elections, which is the reason why I do the show, which is the reason why I bring guys on like you and Anthony Ramondi and Deadleg to help me cipher through it, because these are all new to me. But I feel like really at these times, I don't want to be on the wrong side of history. I don't want to look at my kids when they're 20 years old, 10 years from now, and say like, man, I wish I would have done something. I wish I would have spoken up. I mean, I could see these things happening before me. I could see our First Amendment being stripped away. I can see that the fact that they're going after Rumble right now, that the UK, okay, so we started 2 weeks ago, if you remember, and if this isn't proof enough, but 2 weeks ago, there was a letter that was released to all the media outlets. And when you're a media outlet, you get these faxes of news that are these big bulletins. Everybody gets them. Maybe your podcast get them. Anybody that has a media, that falls under quote unquote media usually gets wrapped up in these models with Drinking Bros. I know Drinking Bros got these things. It's a little fax that comes in with all the big headlines and all the things to cover. Well, one went out last Friday. We covered it. We actually showed it on the show, but it said that they were encouraging all media outlets. They even said this to OAN, who is like one of the most, I don't know. A lot of people would call it a far right news source, but it even went out to them that there needs to be, that we need to put more pressure on Republican.
Right.
What were the exact words, Ted? Like, I can't remember what it was.
It was heavily
more scrutiny.
More scrutiny. I didn't mean for that to pop up just now, but more scrutiny on what they're asserting as their allegations in the impeachment hearings. Like, in other words, it's when it came time for the Democrats to do their impeachment, they just stayed silent about it, and the White House just said, like, let's let the chips fall where they may. I think any White House in their right mind would say, hey, let's, these allegations are false. Like, you're going to see. However, they took it a step further and kind of like flexed their muscle as a government body and said, hey, you need to really, really, really look into this stuff. Like they don't need to really, really look into anything else, but this stuff is, like, for some reason not real or something.
So here's a question that I have. What specifically in the terms of service of YouTube did Russell Brand violate? Because that is what they pulled him off of YouTube, because they don't want him on YouTube because
I think what they tried to pull in was basically unbecoming of an influencer.
That has nothing to do. So what specifically did he say or do to get him removed? because
Well, I
that's
guess it
what
would be like if he sexually assaulted somebody, that would be unbecoming. It would be like unbecoming of an officer.
So then YouTube's going to pull everybody that's ever had a sexual assault is banned from YouTube. Because if you're going to apply the rules for one person, you got to apply them for everybody. And when you get amplified pressure for one person, that's what they're doing. Is you have all this amplified attention to one person for this one issue, where we can all agree, yes, if this person is sexually assaulting people, this is bad. We can all agree that that is bad. But also at the same time, making allegations and then letting the media run with it and creating the narrative, and you have a verdict before charges are even brought up. Like they're sending letters to Rumble to pull him off of Rumble. What did he say or do to get what terms of service? Because that's the risk that we run into, that Tim Pool runs into, that anybody else that runs into when we start talking about stuff that they don't want us to talk about because it doesn't fit the narrative. Well, the narrative, they'll put it in the terms of service and make it so gray that they'll try to pull you off because of something in terms of service. But those terms of service are something that are binding. That's a legal document that we have to operate within. We can't go outside of it or we get pulled off. So what has he done on this platform that has got him removed? Because if you want to say the sexual assault, okay, give me 15 minutes. I'll bring you up 10, 20 verified accounts on YouTube that had multiple assault allegations, if not convictions. People are convicted. We talked about last night that there's someone's convicted of possibly in a quadruple murder walking free. So if we're going to start and we're going to lay the hard line on YouTube that, hey, this is where we're drawing the line in the sand, that we don't like any this, if you do this off the platform, we're going to pull you off too. That's when we start running into this really scary stuff that we're talking about that extends out to, okay, they're going after Russell Brand today. Who is it tomorrow? Is it Tim Pool?
Tim Pool brings that up. I saw somebody else, Maverick Effect, said that Tim Pool, and we were just up at Tim Pool's compound last week. It was awesome. But I've heard Tim Pool talk a lot about when is he going to be on the chopping block? They got rid of Project Veritas. They destroyed Project Veritas for literally reporting on news, for doing actual real journalism. And I love it when people call it far right journalism. But I mean, you don't see the far left, trying to infiltrate the far right and coming up with the same kind of sources. I see you have a graph there. What is that about, Drew?
This is exactly what you're saying. It supports everything that you're saying. This came out this week. It's a Pew Research study that talks about, quote, misinformation online. It says Democrats have become more supportive than Republicans of the government restricting false information online. Like, who decides what's false information to begin with? But if you look, those that in it's years 18, 21, and 23 for the three lines, right? So those that are Republican or lean Republican, 37%, 28, and 39% respectively, say the U.S. government should take steps to restrict false information online, even if it limits freedom of speech. That's the Republican side. The Democrat side says 40, 65%, and 70% say that the U.S. government should take steps to restrict false information online, even if it limits freedom of speech. Or freedom of information, actually. And it says the freedom of information should be protected. So the opposite, and it's decreased. It's maintained on the Republican side. Essentially, it was higher in 21 than it was in 23. It is significantly decreased on the Democrat side. So the Democrats now, from 18 to 21 and 21 to 23, don't think that freedom of information should be protected, even if it means false information can be published. And that's 28% of so that's over 1 in 4 Democrats, right? I mean, it's the sample size is significant enough. So 1 in 4 Democrats are saying, yeah. And what they're going to say is false information is anything that the conservatives say, anything that the right says, and that's ridiculous. You how can you restrict speech like that? That's if it's not harmful. There is a time, place, and manner, restriction on free speech. This is you can't yell fire in a crowded movie theater. But beyond that, what are we doing here? The Constitution is pretty easy to interpret it. Like it's an inalienable right. It's a God-given right, freedom of speech. You can say whatever you want to say.
They say it's going to get, what's getting wild when everything is far right. You can't listen to anything without that. I mean, they consider Tim Pool to be far right. They consider just about anybody that opposes Joe Rogan. Joe Rogan. I've seen tweets and things about calling Joe Rogan. Hey, Joe Rogan's gone way too far right. It's like, okay, so if you're just conservative, if you're not voting for Joe Biden, are you far right? Is that what we're going with here?
Yeah.
If you vote for American, you're far right at this point.
I had somebody come into my distillery. I've said this, I've told this story before, but one of the first things that they said was that, wow, this is very intimidating seeing that large American flag in here. What's intimidating about having a large American flag in a veteran-owned and operated distillery? It makes no sense to me. Also, last week we had a live musician in. It was a female, and she had blue hair, and she kind of shamed me for having 5 kids. She was saying that, oh, I see what you're doing. Oh, okay, I see. You guys are making a lifestyle out of it. Okay, no, I see what you're doing. You probably like country music too. And I was like, what? She's like, well, I saw your mullet. So I get it. A lot of kids, country music. I see what you're doing. I see your lifestyle. And I was like, she also apologized to my entire bar for saying the word idiot. She's also the only person at the bar that ever mentioned the name Trump. Everybody was hanging out, watching Bob Ross, having a couple of drinks. She brought the name Trump up. It's like these left-wing nuts, they're obsessed, dude. They're obsessed with anything that is, how can be having 5 beautiful kids be seen in a negative light? I've never witnessed negativity in my bar. Matter of fact, one of our patrons, one of our regulars, had enough and went and put on some super offensive music and was just being over the top to try to kick somebody, because they wanted this girl to leave. But never once on our bar have we had any problems. We have black people in our bar. We have black comedy nights. We've had reggae shows. We've had tons of gay people in there. It's always been this, kind of like a roof for the outcasts of people. Anyway, we have poker groups that come in there. We have art groups that come in there. We have magic gatherings that go on in there, and Dungeons and Dragons, and we have punk bands, and we have reggae shows, and we have bluegrass shows. I mean, we've literally covered Jeep days. I mean, it's literally a sanctuary for anyone to have a good time. It's non-political. There's a lot of Bob Ross. There's a lot of, beachy artifacts hanging on the wall. It's like a rum bar. It's so much fun. But only when you have a blue-haired leftist liberal come in does the whole bar become all about them. It becomes about their politics. It's not about having a good time. It's not about drinking rum. It's not, all it is about shaming folks and shaming myself in front of my own patrons. And I would never do that to a leftist.
Everyone has a sinister motive. It's just that this is the problem. Like, Adam Carolla, I've said it before on the show, but Adam Carolla says all the time that, what a time to be alive, because you can be an actual racist because everybody gets called a racist. So you might as well just be an actual racist, right? Like, you're just going to get lumped in with some actually pretty nice people. But it's just like, it's the arrogance to say, only I can determine that you're a racist, and therefore I'm going to label you as such. Give me a break. You think that I don't know, or you think that, especially in our profession, you think that I, as a law enforcement officer, can't differentiate the difference between police brutality and overt racism? Do you think that you're the foremost authority on this, topic, that there's only one explanation for this? It's that you're beating down black people, but there's a few other explanations for it. It's got nothing to do with the color of their skin. It has to do with the interaction that's taking place. And it doesn't matter if they're black or they're white or whatever. This is, maybe this is going to sound controversial, but I'm probably running 110-degree fever right now. But did you see the footage from Philadelphia, for God's sakes? And that was a bunch of animals out there. And I'm calling those people that were out there animals. If the shoe fits, wear it. It's got nothing to do with the color of their skin. It's got nothing to do with anything else. Oh my God. There's looting riots taking place. The cops are being overrun. They took a very, a section of town with a lot of shops in it, and they're just tearing it up right now. just looting and breaking windows and of course they're live streaming it on TikTok or live streaming it on Instagram, and they're just having such a good time with it. Having a great time. Just everybody's laughing, and I don't care what color your skin is. That's animalistic behavior. That's an animal.
Yeah. I mean, that's what they want to see. They want to see the peasants acting like peasants, so that they can come in and govern them even more harder and put more restrictions and curfews and government restrictions. You don't see this shit happening here, though, in a small town. Try that in a small town, as they say. Listen, it's shit like what Drew just said that's got us back in the shadow band arena in the last 2 weeks. Haven't seen this one in a hot minute. We went from being almost top 200 on the iTunes charts. We did break into the top 200 on the iTunes charts, and then we were trending all the way to 23, the top 23 spot on Chartable. We've now fallen all the way back in a week over to 223rd spot. Also, we went from 400 followers in a month on Instagram down to we haven't had a single follower in 2 weeks on Instagram, which I find that very funny. And then we went from 100 a week on YouTube to now being stagnant at about 10 a week. So not exactly sure. Not exactly sure what's going on, but everything in the last 2 weeks has stopped for us growth-wise. Also, we haven't had a rating and review in 2 weeks, which we have almost 1,800 ratings and reviews. Do the math. We get ratings and reviews all the time. So whether they're good or bad, we've gotten zero in 2 weeks, which is not like it. So kind of the way to combat this, and a couple other social media guys are doing this too, is you need to, if you really want to support free speech, we're not asking you for money. However, if you join our Patreon for extra account, it does help keep the show afloat. Supporting our sponsors, Ghostbed, Factor Meals, Officer Privacy, that keeps us going. We don't have an ad agency anymore after we left the major network. We have no ad agency, so that we can go out and find our own advertisers and do everything on our own, so that we can say whatever we want. We don't have to have the problem we had a year ago when they tried to cancel us because they didn't like our pro Uvalde take. So, but what you can do to help us that's free is leave a comment. And I'm not talking about in the live chats on the YouTubes, but physically commenting on YouTube. You can comment something that elicits an answer, maybe like a question, so that maybe one or two people will answer your question. It can be easier than that. You can just throw some emojis up there, whatever it is. But if you guys will help give us some comments on our Instagram, if you'll leave some comments on here and rating and review on podcasts, that'll kind of manually break. I don't know. I know that shadow banning is real. When I was with Mike the Cop and they demonetized us for 5 months and Mike the Cop lost somewhere around $15,000, that's insanity. I don't know that that's happening right this second because we haven't been demonetized or anything like that. But I do think it's odd that in 2 weeks, like I said, going from 400 followers a month on Instagram, we don't pay for followers. We don't pay to boost things or do any of that kind of things. We don't follow for follow. We don't play any of the games. And we were getting about 400 followers a month, and then we've got zero in 2 weeks. Zero. We got 1,800, almost 1,800 ratings and review, and now we're down to zero. It makes no sense. So what you can do to help us break this is just simply share us with your friends. Okay, now let's go ahead. Drew, go ahead and pull up the video now.
Yeah, I got some video for it. I just want to add to what you're saying, Eric.
By the way,
there are several other cop related or police related or law enforcement related channels like ours or Instagram accounts or whatever, and we're all having the same issue. I don't think it's a matter of content or putting out what we put out. We try to give you the best that we can, and I think those other people are working very hard to try to do the same thing. And I think that there's a lot of quality content out there. There's a lot of truth out there, but it just seems kind of odd. And I'm not one to complain. I'm just one to work. Sure. I'm not saying Eric's complaining. I'm just I turn that into fuel. Like if you tell me no, that pretty much means, okay, you fucked up because now I'm going to work in overdrive. But the thing is, I don't think we're the only ones. I really think that with the election year coming up, that They're doing everything they can. And here's the offer. Here's the evidence that I offer. I was talking to Eric about this yesterday to try to explain some of it away. I'm a YouTube like follower now. Like I watch YouTube constantly. It's kind of like my job almost. So I watch a lot of YouTube during the day. I don't watch really that much TV anymore. I just watch YouTube on my TV. And all of the stuff that I'm being suggested from YouTube is all cops being arrested, cops being corrupt, cop breaks down during interview before being arrested, cop audit, corrupt city council, sides with police chief. And it's usually these auditors and they have like 65,000 followers and 200 million views on each of their fucking videos. So everybody tends to believe them or whatever. And I could pick them apart in 10 seconds. Like, yeah, okay, well, you just overinflated that. You're lying about that. So I really don't think, I really think it's political climate. I think that it is big tech working kind of hard against us. This is what they're not focusing on. Ded, can you put this on the screen or do I have to do it? Oh, thank you.
Got one!
This is the Apple Store.
Got one! Free iPhones! Free iPhones! Free iPhones! Look, security running.
Oh shit, what's up?
Yeah,
Oh
All
my
right.
God.
So
What is she even saying? What?
Got one. I think they've made a game of it. Like, I didn't mean for that to start up again. I think they've made a game of it where you can, where once you hit a store, like you get to proclaim that you've hit that store. There's a few examples just like that. There's like they hit a Lululemon, they hit a I'm trying to think of what the other stores are, but it's different people actually narrating it. It's not the same people, and they're doing the same thing. It's a celebration out there. It's in the streets, and there's one where the cops are in a they're in a tussle. I mean, they're in a war. They're throwing people around. They're being thrown around, and people are jumping on their backs, and it's just mayhem. And this is dare I say it, a Democrat-run city called Philadelphia. The DA there is a guy named Larry Krasner, Democrat, and he's a Soros Democrat, and he's he put forward the Soros mentality and policy. And this is where we are. I think that they're going to spend more time in that DA's office trying to figure out how to not charge these people than they are just trying to establish law and order in the city again. And that's what the majority of the people there, the taxpayers, deserve. Just some law and order. What's so hard about that?
Yeah, blows my mind what's going on what's just going on across country. But I've said it a million times, Drew, that this is all for a purpose, and that purpose is federalized policing. They want feds to be in charge of everything. They want federal programs. This is all part of the design plan. The Tanstradamus prediction was put into place 2 years ago. Go back and watch any of my shows. I've said that they have to create anarchy and they have to create chaos so that the government, big daddy government, can come in and save everybody. And then that's exactly what we're seeing here now. But one thing I never thought I would see in my lifetime, in 1 week, we have a Nazi, a real life SS Nazi soldier with a standing ovation in front of like a parliamentary house in Canada, in front of everybody, Americans, the UK, all sorts of people, and everybody giving this man. And then in the same week, Anne Frank's diary taken off of reading list because it has pornographic material in it. We're going to get to both of these stories. Do we have a pull up of the Canadian? Josh, I'm not sure if you have it or not, but do we have anything on the Canadian? No, we don't. Well, I'll bring up the article here if you guys don't know. In Canada, let's see here. I'm sorry.
Essentially, Prime Minister Trudeau was addressing Parliament, and there's a Speaker of the House here that brought forward this 90-something-year-old man from Ukraine, and I think they had Vladimir Zelensky in there. So they were.
Zelensky was in there.
Yeah, they were.
And
in
this
there
guy was a
kissing-
98-year-old war hero.
They
He
were
fought
just
in Ukraine's independence during World War II.
Yeah.
Poland has
were
already
just-
asked. Go ahead. I was going to say Poland has already sent letters to Canada to try to get him extradited so they can try him for the war crimes that happened during World War II when he was an SS soldier. That's going on at the same time.
Yahtzee. There's no way they hand that guy over. No fucking way. There's
No, I mean, he made it this far.
Yoshalav Unka wiped away tears on receiving the rousing recognition from the Canadian House of Commons on Friday. He was singled out by Speaker Anthony Rota, who called him a hero, following a speech by the visiting Ukraine leader, who in turn raised a fist during the applause. But Rota apologized Sunday after he said he subsequently became aware of more information about Unka's past. The Ukrainian non-agenarian, I don't know what that means, did fight the Soviet Union, but as a part of the 14th Wolfengreiner Division of the SS, a Nazi military unit whose crimes against humanity during the Holocaust are well documented, according to the Friends of Simon Wiesenthal Center, a Canadian human rights group promoting awareness about the Holocaust and fighting anti-Semitism. This is coming from NBC News, by the way. Good grief, how embarrassing.
I mean, it was just so perfect the way they were stroking this guy. It was just that totally sing-songy, virtue signaling tone, like he is a resident of North Bay, Ontario, or wherever he's from. Like they're just talking about how he's a Canadian now, and he was a Ukrainian, and blah blah blah, and they're just like making him out to be this incredible hero, and they could not stop applauding for this fucking guy.
Yeah, but like, whose job was it to make sure that this dude was not a Nazi before they?
Can you run a criminal history on the guy first? That's all I'm asking.
That seems like that's got to be somebody's job. Like that would be like Josh Deadleg's. Like, yo, Deadleg, we got a guest coming on. Like, I feel like Deadleg pretty much would let me know if this dude was a Nazi. Like,
yeah, that was my bad. I got an email here from the Prime Minister. I'm supposed to vet this guy. That was my bad. So, sorry, sorry, guys. That's my bad. I'll take the L for that one.
Drop ski on that one. Yeah,
you're suspended with pay until tomorrow night at 8 p.m. when Compson.
So that Speaker of the House, by the way, resigned yesterday.
Oh, I'm pretty sure. You kind of have to at that point. One of the nebulous justifications given by Russian President Vladimir Putin for invading his former Soviet is that he wants to denazify Ukraine, which he says is being run by neo-Nazis embedded by the West. Well, shit, there's a little bit of fuel to your fire there, Putin. Damn, dude. Oh, that is embarrassing. But here's the thing. It's crazy is that NBC News actually put that in the article, even though the NBC put that at the very bottom. Like, there is a very hard turn by the media in support of Ukraine. And I was shocked when I saw this 60 Minutes Ukraine thing. Did you see this?
No, I didn't see it. I heard you talk about it, but I haven't seen it.
Oh my gosh. So 60 Minutes, right? Remember when we were all chastised? Anybody that questioned the war on Ukraine was met with hostile treason-like rhetoric.
You're a Russian lover.
You're a Russian lover. You're a Putin sympathizer.
Yeah.
Couldn't question any of it. And now coming out on mainstream media on 60 Minutes is an entire episode dedicated to where our money is going, and it paints this picture of Ukraine as this like thriving metropolis. Small businesses have been completely bailed out, that our tax dollars are going to seeding grass all around, that they're paying law enforcement officers and first responders, that they're training dogs, searching cadaver dogs. But it paints this like almost like utopian style picture, not like a war. When I think of Ukraine, I think of Lion King, when everything was black and gray, and the hyenas are taking over. Much how I kind of see America right now. Unfortunately, I really do. I hate to say this, but in the Trump regime, as some people like to call it, I think grass was fucking greener. Was it not? Like I feel like the air was fresher.
You know, it's kind of funny that you say that, Eric, because I went a couple summers ago. I was in a relationship with somebody, and we went on a cruise to the Baltic capitals. And one of the we spent 2 days in St. Petersburg in Russia.
Yeah.
You know, we saw for 2 days, but it was very controlled. Like, you know, there was somebody that was approved by the government to take us around and all this other stuff. But growing up as a Cold War kid, and I know I'm a little advanced in the age of you guys and maybe most of the people watching, but I was a Cold War kid. I was always told how horrible Russia is and how black and white it is. And, you know, there are even TV commercials that just portrayed them to be just like this, literally, like you don't know how they lived in color. You think that they just lived in black and white and everything was dreary and everything was controlled by the government and everything. And then when I got there, it was just surreal. It was like completely surreal. Like St. Petersburg was vibrant and it was very colorful and it was full of life and a lot of alive people that were just maybe didn't agree with their government, but they definitely were just human beings, just like we were. And I kind of saw it that way. And it's just funny how propaganda or the government can control your mind that way. Because I'm telling you, that's how I've got great photos from my time in St. Petersburg. They were the picture of opulence. So like all of their palaces were adorned in gold, and you know, I think that's where gold on the ceiling comes from. Maybe that's from Saddam Hussein, who knows? But it's just it was I won't call it a beautiful city. It's just a very different experience from what I had. But when you compare it and contrast it with what I believed it was when I was in junior high school and high school, I went to high school with John Wayne Bobbitt, by the way, true story. When you can compare it and contrast it, it's like a totally different place. So I am quite sure that Ukraine is the exact same way. And then of course, the only thing that we see on the news right now are the war-torn areas, the destroyed, you know, schools with nothing but children, or the children's ward at the hospital being blown up by the Russians. And, you know, that's all we're doing is just, you know, getting hammered in our heads that that's what's going on there. But when you see actually what's there, different story.
Yeah. For me, I was shocked to see 60 Minutes paint the picture of Ukraine that they painted. It shows a different swing in the pendulum, right? The pendulum's going the opposite direction now, whereas a year ago, 60 Minutes, you know, would have been painting a much different picture of Ukraine, and it's as if that pendulum has swung. I don't know why the pendulum is swinging against Ukraine. Maybe it's because $70 billion is just unreasonable. Maybe $70 billion when they made Trump the laughing stock of the world for wanting to build a $50 billion wall to protect our borders, and that was audacious and that was unreasonable. But now we've spent $70 billion on a war effort in Ukraine, but not just the war effort, but on maintaining a stable kind of democracy to the whole thing. I don't remember us spending that kind of money. Nobody ceded Afghanistan. I'll tell you right now, it didn't happen. I can tell you, I didn't see any of this kind of thing going on in Afghanistan, in the Afghanistan war. This is a much different war than I've ever seen before. And I think people are starting to question it, and I think they have reason to. And I think it's funny that at the beginning, those same people were called conspiracy theories and called all sorts of names. And again, just like COVID, oh, Jesus, we're all right now, you know. Strange times. I'd like to see like where this goes. I wish I knew where this was playing out, because obviously the propaganda media is doing it for a reason. But why? Are they realizing that what's going on in Ukraine's not working? And we got to start changing the people's minds on how they feel about Ukraine. I don't know. What do you guys think what's the purpose of?
I've got an idea. If my son was on the board of a company that had a lot to do with things in that country, and we could just send billions and billions of dollars to that country, and then while we're doing that, we'll put legislature in there to make sure that there's no accountability for any of it. We're not going to question where it goes. We're not going to question what it goes to. We're not going to question what it pays for. At the same time, while we're spending billions and billions of dollars of your tax dollars, we're going to do all of this. At the same time, we're talking about the possibility of another government shutdown because we don't have a budget that we can't fix. But we've already made sure that funding for Ukraine will constantly happen regardless if our government shuts down. So if our entirety of our government, your tax dollars, are going to this government and it's going to shut down, but instead of working and doing what it's supposed to be doing, they're going to take that money and send it someplace else. I'm not going to go ahead. I'm not going to be a conspiracy theorist or anything like that, but I'm just going to go ahead and say, you're not going to send billions and billions of dollars at it over there, and some of it isn't getting kicked back to people over here. People that are going to be pushing this. You want to know look what companies have got their stock, all these companies in Northrop Grumman and Halliburton and all these that have all these military equipment. They're building up for something. They're putting all this investment into something. They think that something's going to happen. And it's all of your money. So instead of our money, American money, taking care of Americans, we've done everything but take care of Americans. And we've sent every bit of it overseas. We're saying that FEMA's broke, so we can't help Hawaii. We can't help the people in Palestine, Ohio. You got the border crossings. We've got all these American issues that we can take care of, all the looting, all of the gas prices, everything that's going on in America. And instead of doing that, we're going to shut America down and send everything to Ukraine.
Yeah, I could have spoke it better myself, mainly because I'm a C student and you're a lot smarter than I am. But a lot of people out here saying that you're spitting absolute truths. Bosco Autry in the chats today says that he just lost a friend. Our thoughts and prayers, THOUGHTS, and prayers out to you. All right, going on to California, fining schools that ban textbooks on race or LGBTQ plus topics. This is a misleading article. The books that are being banned that have to do with LGBTQ plus or race are specifically banned because of, pretty unreasonable sexual commentary, sexual writings. And so because of that, we've now lumped in Anne Frank because Anne Frank mentions her genitalia in the Diary of Anne Frank. And so now Anne Frank is being banned in Texas, or at least the unedited version of Anne Frank is being banned in Texas. And I'm not sure if that's from a far right winger or a far left winger, but obviously the far left is now going after these bannings of books and LGBTQ plus. And I think here with this is the public school system has lost so much credibility, almost to the point where the police department has lost all credibility because the command staff has been so unreasonable and so obsessed with getting their names on policies. It doesn't matter how ridiculous the policy is as long as they can get their name on the policy. And now the schools have just more policies. I talked to a teacher yesterday, and they said it's almost ridiculous. You almost kind of count the days. You have to have a union now to be a school teacher because now that you're being paid unfair, because you've always been paid unfairly, but you have to have a union right now because the kids have complete and total control. And if the kids don't like you, they can drum up whatever story about you that they want, and almost immediately the school will remove you or suspend you. The students have become the mob, much like the mob of children you saw in Philadelphia. What is you guys' takes on the bannings of these books in California, fining schools that attempt to ban these certain books?
I think banning books is a very misleading statement. It's like Black Lives Matter. Like, it's not true. That's not exactly what the crux of this is. Of course, Black Lives Matter. And if you disagree with, quote, Black Lives Matter, the organization, then obviously you disagree that Black Lives Matter, and that's not true. So they're able to call this a book ban when in actuality it is more selective of what you're putting in age appropriate material. We have that in movies, we have that in video games, we have that everywhere else. But when it comes to, for some reason, when it comes to books, we call it banning because we don't want to offend the drag queen who might sit down and read a book, or we don't want to offend the gender. Well, look, if you want to really get into this whole thing, there's an association that produces or sanctions or governs, I guess, the librarians of the U.S. It's called the American Libraries Association or something like that. Maybe that may not be the exact. And the leader, the head of the organization is I believe a Marxist, and she is the one that's kind of pushing this whole agenda of queer theory, gender theory, and all this other stuff. And all the librarians are just like, yeah, what you're so if a parent brings forward a book to a school board and says that there's, X, Y, and Z in here that I don't think is age appropriate, they all just gather together and say, well, they're just trying to ban books. But that's not true. And I almost think that this Anne Frank thing is like a countermeasure. Like, okay, well, you're going to ban Anne Frank then because she talks about a vagina. No, but she's not talking about keeping a secret sex change operation from her parents. And she's not, you know what I mean? She's not talking about blowjobs and fellatio. You know what I mean? Like,
she's a 13-year-old girl talking about how does a baby
she's
come
fucking
out of
trapped. Yeah, she's hiding from Nazis. She's trapped in a fucking attic, writing her fears
having
and
a
her
period
thoughts
for her first time with no tampons.
Yeah,
because
right.
because they've spent so much time on this, I'm just going ahead and assume that the school district has outstanding scores for academics, for mathematics and reading and science and all those other things that are going to be important in life. I'm going to just go ahead and assume that those are taken care of and those are outstanding students. Because if you go back and you start looking at these schools, they are failing miserably at everything. You're putting these kids out and they're going to go out in life and they're going to think that everything about life is about sexuality. Well, no, you got to be able to put a plant in the ground and be able to grow it to get some food. Now you have to know how to cook it to be able to eat it. You have to know how to kill the cow to be able to get the meat and stuff. There's stuff that we have to teach. They're just completely looking over it and saying, hey, what's more important if you're coloring in the lines or finding out if you can keep a blowjob from your mom and dad? Like,
right.
These
I'm going to read this really quick. This is coming from, this is coming from NPR. California Governor Gavin Newsom signed a bill into law Monday prohibiting school boards across the state from banning books, instructional materials, or curricula categorized as inclusive or diverse. Under the new law, which went into effect immediately after its signing, the state can fine schools that would block textbooks and library books that allow students to learn about diverse communities. The bill, formerly known as AB 1078, also authorizes Tony Thurmond, State Superintendent of Public Instruction, to purchase instructional materials for school districts, regain costs from the purchases, and determine whether to fine school boards if they do not abide by the state's updated instructional standards. Reason number 536 to go ahead and get your kids out of the fucking public school systems. It's absolutely getting ridiculous. I don't know how anybody puts up with California and Governor Newsom. Did you hear that he's doing the new the new debates?
Yeah, he's doing a debate against DeSantis.
Yeah.
I think also though that he does everything that Ron DeSantis does, but in the opposite. So if Ron DeSantis does a kind of a bill that limits pornographic material in schools, he calls it a book ban and puts, make sure that somebody in the legislature puts forth the bill to make sure that they get to see all of it, whether it's harmful to kids or not. Because let me just get my Gavin Newsom stuff off of my chest here. Gavin Newsom pushed that vaccine and the boosters and got on TV and did his boosters and his boosters and his boosters. He was supposed to go to a forum of some type. Maybe it was the World Economic Forum or something. He was supposed to represent the state of California at this forum, and he wasn't able to go. So the rumor with all of his staffers, in fact, there was a tweet, then a deleted tweet, that he had Bell's palsy. So that was associated with some type of reaction to the booster. And he got it like right after he got this booster. So the governor of the second largest state in the union goes underground. You can't find him. He's supposed to be at this conference. He's not there. And then at the end of it, at the end of the week or whatever, he emerges and he says, look, everyone, I just wanted to spend Halloween at home with my kids. And the reason I didn't make any appearances because I didn't think it was right. I should have been at that conference. And I just wanted to, who better to have spend time with than your family. He was hiding the fact that his face was drooped like everybody was doing. And he's pushing and pushing and pushing this vaccine and booster. And his face was, so he's hiding, right? Well, he didn't learn his lesson. Like, because a week later, he signed that into law where it was mandatory, that particular vaccine was mandatory for schools. So this thing that almost that harmed him in some way, that he was not man enough to share with the public, that actually occurred, is something that he's willing to subject children to. And if you look, even the CDC's, there's a cool stat somewhere. The CDC put out, I don't even think they realized they did it. The number of COVID deaths were like between 1 and 5. The number of adverse reactions from that liquid was like 20,000 to 40,000. So the thing that's supposed to save you from the thing that's not killing anybody is actually more harmful than the thing itself.
Man, talking like that makes you sound like a real conspiracy theorist, Drew.
Yeah,
I thought you said that
I
you
am.
weren't into conspiracy theories, but
I am.
spitting facts like that is going to get you branded right there with all the other conspiracy theorists. This has come from The Guardian. Gail Horalak. Go ahead and remember that name, Gail Horalak. Horalek. Now, I don't know who Gail Horalak is. All I know is that, according to The Guardian, she's the mother of a 7th grade child in Michigan in the United States, and has made international headlines by complaining that the unabridged version of Anne Frank's diary is pornographic and should not be taught in her daughter's school. At issue for Horalek is a section detailing Anne Frank's exploration of her own genitalia. Now, listen, I read it. I went back and read this, and basically paraphrasing it, because I've lost my section here, is here it is right here. This is what she says. This is what Anne Frank says in her diary, the unabridged. This is what she wrote about her own vagina. She says, "There are little folds of skin all over the place. You can hardly find it. The little hole underneath is so terribly small that I simply can't imagine how a man can get in there, let alone how a baby can get out." And now listen, she wrote this at 13 years old. I don't know if there's a 13-year-old in existence that hasn't had that exact fucking thought.
Yeah,
I mean shit, my 10-year-old sons are, I'm sure they're like, how does a baby come out of a belly button? You know what I'm saying? Like, they're only 10.
Like, do we not encourage, by the way, like, okay, a child or not a child, somebody that's in development, exploring their own body and having questions is probably appropriate. Somebody that's in development wanting to explore their fucking neighbor Cindy's body and describe her clitoris in detail, that's fucking different. They're way different. And I don't think that Anne Frank was like doing this for pornographic purposes. She's like fucking she just saw the moon for the first time. You know what I mean? Like, what the fuck?
So luckily, Horalek, according to The Guardian, predictably has been left out of town. Even commentators on the conservative Fox Detroit Facebook page, where the story broke last week, are disparaging. They say things like, "Laugh my ass off, people get mad about the stupidest shit. It's history. Maybe we should let our kids really know what happened at Thanksgiving too." I don't know that anybody on the left or the right agrees with this. Horalek is, of course, wrong to call the passages pornographic. Pornography is material intended to arouse sexual excitement, and very much doubt that was Anne Frank's intention when she wrote her imaginary confidant Kitty about her journeys of self-discovery. But the reasons Horalek gives for complaining in the first place is that the passages made her daughter uncomfortable. Oh, Jesus, this kid's fucked. That kid is so fucked. You want to talk about anxieties and issues? Parental illness is what causes shit like this. And that child is going to suffer greatly from all of these things because her mom is a fucking train wreck. Michael Hendricks says, "How did Anne Frank end? They were captured and died in the camp." It's pretty sad. It's a pretty terrible book.
I don't have kids, so you guys would be able to speak on it a little bit better than I would. But if you find a book or find something that your kid's reading and you don't agree with it and you don't like it, take it away from them. Be the goddamn parent. You don't need the government to come tell you there's a law that you can't do this. Just take the damn thing away and tell them, no, you can't do this. And if they try to do it again, put them in the corner. You're the parent. You're in charge. They're the child.
Well, that's what I love. Go ahead.
That's all well and good until they're in the school library and you're not there. What are you
That's
going to
true,
do at
too.
that point?
That's true, too. And
If it's available
there was
to
a
them in the
picture.
school library.
There was a picture on that article that showed a library display, and the book says like "I'm queer" and that's okay, with a big rainbow on it, and then three other rainbow books. I mean, why? I mean, there's so many other things on a month-to-month basis that are so much more important than gay people. You know, why aren't we learning about that? I mean, fuck, the Roman Empire is more important than learning about gay struggles. I mean, there are more life lessons in the Roman Empire, or the Egyptians and how they built the pyramids, or the Indians and the Trail of Tears and learning from that. And I mean, the list goes on and on and on. History of Oaxaca is more important than the history of gay rights, in my opinion, for a child that age. David and Goliath style stories, stories about Muhammad and all those things. You know, I can think of 1,000 other topics. You know, why do we need a display of homosexual history in a children's library? It's all very absurd. It's all very unreasonable, and I can see why parents are upset. But you know, I can also see why there's a record number of families fleeing to homeschooling. Me personally, I if anybody out there wants to homeschool, DM me. I will motivate the shit out of you. I'll tell you how to get started in it. I absolutely love it, and think it's, you know, if you can do it, if you can make it happen, you should do it. You know, especially nowadays, the schools are just getting too out of control, and I think there's more side effects from public school than there are good effects from public school these days. I mean, if I would work 6 jobs to put my kid in a private school of my choosing if I couldn't homeschool. But that's just me. I don't know. You know, I guess some people can handle it. I don't know how though. My brother's a teacher in public schools, and he talks to me. He vents to me 2 or 3 times a week, and it blows my mind. I don't remember school being like that when I was a kid.
I don't either.
I don't remember those kinds of problems. It's very strange to me. But yeah, a lot of topics that we covered through today. Listen, here's some good news for those of you who are just tuning in. October 27th, 26th, and 27th. That's the Thursday and Friday in October. Ken Shamrock, the UFC legend, the WCW legend. They are having Valor with a V, Valor Bare Knuckle Fight event in Jacksonville, Florida. We are doing a meetup. Looks like this meetup is going to happen at Island Girl Cigar Bar. We'll have more information this afternoon. It is for first responders and supporters of first responders, for a private meetup with Ken Shamrock. And then all of us, the Failure Stop crew, a lot of us will be going to the fight. I think there's a couple people flying in town for that. I know Drew Breezy will be there with myself. And we'll be going to this bare knuckle fight. But if you want to do a private meetup at Island Girl Cigar Bar in Jacksonville, Florida, and Ponte Vedra, Florida, that's tentatively exactly where it's going to be. We'll know more about this for Friday's show. But I did get off the phone with Ken Ken Shamrock's people, his publicist, and he says it's definitely a go. Just getting the times situated, but it's pretty much set in stone at this point that it will be at Island Girl Cigar Bar. We're just trying to figure out the date and the time, and that is going to be October 17th. And I'm sorry, the 27th, and it looks like the 26th. So Thursday and Friday. And I'm not sure which is going to be the meetup. The meetup might be on Friday morning, but I think it's going to be Thursday night. And listen, I don't know if this is going to happen, but it looks like Shamrock's people are trying to get the weigh-in at our first responder meetup to do the weigh-in with us. So the first responders and supporters behind the media as the media goes through and does the weigh-ins for the big bare knuckle fight. So this is Bare Knuckle Fight 2. It's huge. Kid Shamrock is a huge fan of first responders. Go online right now and go ahead and get the ticket to the fight. We're all going to be there, and we're all going to be at Island Girls Cigar Bar probably Thursday night and at some point on Friday. So you will get to meet all of us at the Failure Stop crew. But we want to see as many of you guys there at the Island Girl Cigar Bar in Ponte Vedra, Florida, Thursday night. And hopefully the meeting with Ken Shamrock will be Thursday night, but if not, it'll be on Friday. But you can go ahead and put it in your calendar that we will all see you guys Thursday night at Island Girl Cigar Bar. And this is going to be really cool. And I hope you guys have fun. But Ken Shamrock's people are super dope. They reached out to us, huge supporters of first responders. So I'm really, really excited. And we have a lot of followers in Florida, so shouldn't be too big of a trip. And then November 11th and 12th, Vinny Montez in North Carolina. Drew Breezy will be emceeing the event, Badges and Boxes event in Albemarle, North Carolina. Get your tickets to go see that. He'll be in Albemarle, North Carolina, just outside of Charlotte, taking care of business there. A bunch of One More and I'm Out of Here podcast guys are flying in for that. And then that next day, it's in Raleigh, and then myself and Jay Durrell will be opening for Vinny Montez, and that will be at Jesse's Honky Tonk in Cary, North Carolina, which is basically Raleigh. So big meetup in North Carolina in November, big meetup in Florida in October. We hope to see you guys there. From myself, the Easy, the Steezy, the beautiful Drew Breezy, Josh from Dead Like Media, and I'm so sorry that we weren't able to have Anthony here because of technical issues, but we'll get it worked out. We're kind of just trying to see where this whole last call news thing has been. Probably our most adaptive show. Like, this show has just been a roller coaster of where it came from and where it's at now. But we're always trying to see what's best for our first responders. Tag a first responder. Let a first responder know. Tell us in our show we are the #1 channel where first responders go to be informed and entertained. We'll see you guys tomorrow night for Comm Center with Drew and Jonathan Bates. Have a good Wednesday, Thursday afternoon. Cheers.